Hello guys, this is Ambassadors na leo tutakuwa na visitor na atakuwa anatuambia more about himself na ni Bwana Solomon. Atakuwa anatuelezea more about disability na challenges amepitia kwa disability. So enjoy guys and subscribe. These are Ambassadors. Welcome to Ambassadors, and here we deal with the persons with disability. Today we have a guest and his name is Mr. Solomon. Welcome, Mr. Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph Kitema, for giving me this chance to air and also to talk to you about issues surrounding persons with disabilities. My name, as you have just mentioned, is Solomon Wambadi Onunga. I'm a resident of Ongatarongei for the last 23 years, and I'm a person with disability, physically handicapped. I started now advocating for the rights of people with disabilities since 2001, when I was still a student, and that one began when we were advocating and agitating for people with disabilities in Kenya, when we were trying to make sure that the Disability Act could be entrenched in the old constitution. Now, together with the activists who are also trying to make sure that our rights are included in the constitution, now they also joined the team then before the promulgation of Section 2A of the Constitution, which did away with the one-party system, and that was the beginning of other stakeholders to agitate for new constitution before the former president, who is the late Honorable Mwai Kibaki, came into power. And after he had attained that kind of presidency, is one person who also made sure that our Disability Act came into being. Now, as time went by, other people with disabilities within Kajiado County also joined us, as we were looking for those respective organizations that could partner with us. And that is how I joined one CBO by the name Give Hope program, that was only championing for the rights of children who are physically challenged, that could not walk due to maybe the physical disability or distortion that they had then. That CBO was led by the late Madam Lynn Mansour. Lynn Mansour was an American, and when she came to Kenya, she came as a French teacher in Kenya High. She taught there for about 11 years before she retired, and then she got interested in matters to do with vulnerable groups, especially children with disabilities in Ongatarongei. Other women, able-bodied, joined her quest to make sure that these children who are also desperate could be assisted, maybe for further surgeries or correction services that was being done in other medical institutions like Kijabe. And that is how the marshal for the local community leaders who joined her and gave her support to look for these vulnerable children who could be sponsored and could undergo correctional services on their boots or on their foot, as well as maybe other needy cases that could be facilitated by her organization then. And that is how she also made sure that she mobilized other physically challenged, the visually challenged people like myself to help her make sure that her dream could come true. And that is how in 2001 I joined her, and we made sure that the people living with disability then would also be known and their voices could be heard through us who are then their leaders here.
Was the madam a PWD?
She was not a PWD, she was an able person or able-bodied person. She only interested to make sure that these children who are just in slum areas like in Kware, here in Ongatarongai, some of them were really experiencing a very isolated situation where no one could cater, no one could think about them, especially to take them to seek maybe medical attention when their foot that were or their limbs that were affected by polio would be corrected so that they can get those mobility devices like wheelchairs later on after surgery has been done, or those who could even seek for maybe what we call scratches that they use to for mobility purposes. Not only that, the shoes that are meant for them, she could make sure that her organization partnered with the Association of Physically Challenged Persons of Kenya that was based in Nairobi before it was moved to Westlands, where we now have the National Council for Persons with Disabilities headquarters. And that is how we started now seeing inclusivity that was being lacked then was put in place, and that is how I started getting involved in matters to do with disability also, to make sure that we join hands with other like-minded persons with disability so that we could also help Madam Lee to make sure that some of our counterparts or my colleagues would also be heard, and that is how we started this journey.
Na background yako ya disability ilitokea wapi, ama ulizaliwa na ukiwa disabled, ama ilikam on the way, ama ni accident?
My condition as a person with disability began when I was affected by poliomyelitis, which is commonly known as polio, that affects the body limbs, that is the bones, which gets weakened, and thereafter you get emaciated, so you are unable to move around like walking. And that is actually what made my limbs, especially my two legs, both right and left.
It affects the two legs?
Yes, when I was only 1 year old, as I was told. Thereafter, I was not able to walk, and I was paralyzed for about 6 months before my parents could take me for medical attention, because by that time they had no information or knowledge about the medical attention or institution that could do some therapy services to enable me come back to normalcy in doing maybe walking or playing like normal child could walk, or do other things also. But a year later, they took me to a missionary school, which again advised them to take me to one of the best institutions that was taking care of us in terms of rehabilitation. That institution is called Nyabondo Rehabilitation Center for the disabled based in Nyakach constituency, Kisumu County, and that is where the correctional services was done. That is operation, or in other words, surgery, that was done or conducted on my left leg while I was still young. And being the fact that my left leg had a condition called club-footed, and that club-footed could mean they could straighten the bone plus the muscles, of which it was plastered. Then it took about some months. Then they make sure that you get the right foot or boots, that is the shoes that is suited for that kind of leg, with the help and the diagnosis of physiotherapist. And thereafter they start training you on how to come back on your foot, and you walk with the help of those who assist you to know how to start walking. If you are not able to, then they could still take you through other process until you stand up. And then even if you are to be given a wheelchair, they take you through on how you can be taught and trained and be supported to know how to move around with the wheelchair. That is under mobility support. And after 3 years is when I started going to school in nursery. Then there was no baby class then, and I was able to be taken back to my birthplace, where there was also another school meant for people with disabilities, that is the children with disability, just about 3 kilometers away from our home. It was started then.
It was a special school.
A special school which was started when I had already been taken for rehabilitation. So the missionaries made sure that they could also come up with other branches, small branches. That home was called Abwao Small Home for the Disabled. So that is where I again started my primary, and thereafter I proceeded up to
It was a boarding school.
It was a boarding school where we could board, and Mark, you have mentioned that I was a boarder, and it was only for 3 kilometers away from where my home was. Apart from the Nyabondo Rehabilitation Center, which took care of me as a result of those medical intervention, that is therapy, as well as surgery that was done on my left leg. And in a small home for people with disability or for the disabled, the missionaries also made sure that they could come for checkup with the help of their doctors. We call them flying doctors, and they were able to make sure that we were given the support, that is the spiritual support, the moral support, and even in material, financially. And all those material support were in form of books that were learning materials that we were given. We were even paid for school fees. That is, by then the school fees was not as high as nowadays, but they could pay for us through the sponsors that they got. So each and every child got his or her sponsor that could send the money through an organization or an NGO by the name Christian Children Fund, CCF, that was based in US, Florida, and it had its branches through all these missionaries. One was in Nyabondo Rehabilitation Center that I was operated on, and they are the ones who paid for all those surgery expenses and bills, hospital bills. And even also when I was in primary, they were the ones to pay for me school fees and also other requirements that were needed there until I completed my class 8. Yes.
So you joined high school?
I joined high school later after completing my class 8. And thereafter they dropped that kind of program where they could not proceed with the high school sponsorship. And it became so difficult because my parents were not able to pay school fees because they had a hope that this program could proceed to offer us that even sponsorship up to high school. So I started from 1 up to Form 2. Then when I joined Form 3, down in the middle before we could proceed, the school fees accrued, it piled up, whereby my parents were not able to pay. Now I had to seek some support elsewhere, where the community around my birthplace also tried to intervene, but it was not enough to cater for the balance that I owed the school. So I had to drop. For about 1 year, I stayed at home, and then I decided to go and visit one of my aunt, just still in Kisumu Town East constituency, at a place or a village known as Kajulu. And that where I went, my aunt's sons, one of them was in Nairobi, but in Langata constituency, where he used to teach as a primary school teacher at Malezi Preparatory School. Then by the name Amos Onyango Agor, who took care of me by making sure that I secure a place in a local secondary school or a high school called Obwolo Mixed Day Secondary School in Kajulu. And that is where I got my Form 4 admission. When the time of joining Form 4 came, and that is where I studied my 4th form and I completed and performed well. Managed to obtain a C plane. Then I proceeded with a college education, where I studied a diploma in business management, after which I proceeded up to university and I graduated with a business management, that is Bachelor of Commerce, business management option.
From which university?
From Strathmore.
Oh, Strath.
Yes. Which really accommodated me. But I began with the Kim Institute of Management, where I studied my diploma in business management. So I proceeded up to degree level from Kim up to Strathmore Business College, where I graduated with a degree in Bachelor of Commerce, business management option.
How was life now after school, after university, after you graduated?
It was not easy because there were other challenges that I went through. I was also taken through or sponsored by the first organization I did mention, called Give Hope Group Program, which also sponsored some of the skills that I also got trained into. One was mobile phone technology. I got a training as a mobile phone technician, which I also repaired handsets then when the mobile phones came into being, and we were the first technicians who could repair the small phones, even up to the ones that were coming into being, because a number of innovations came up to now. But we got the first skills and knowledge on how to repair mobile phones hardware wise and also software wise. I repaired mobile phones since 2004, and
You were employed, or you employed
I
yourself?
got employment with one by the name Highest Electronics, which also made sure that by then those who are young or the youth then who could be taken for mobile phone repair courses could be empowered to make sure that you get employed by those who had already set up their mobile phone services within Nairobi. Not only that, I got also trained in computer basic knowledges and skills, which empowered me and furnished me with a number of skills. Then I was able to also repair phones software wise, because by then if you are not, or if you could not manage to handle software faults with the phones or computers or a laptop or a desktop, then you cannot even serve the customers that were coming to the shops that I was employed. It went from that time of 2005 up to 2008, when we had a post-election violence which disrupted everything. And that is when I developed I didn't have an interest again to repair phones, because I even set up my shop. But due to that kind of violence, some people came and vandalized my shop. They took advantage, and they took phones belonging to customers that were already repaired, and some of the electronic gadgets like the TVs that some of my technicians or my employees were trying to also repair in my shops were all taken, and I had to report the matter to the police, Ongatarongai police station, because the owners of those items were on me, they were on my neck, and life was not easy then, because you can imagine when violence has erupted, or hooligans normally take advantage,
like the
and they make sure that they loot everything in shops along the streets, and they make sure that whatever they see good in those respective shops or enterprises, they destroy or they vandalize or they go and even sell to their customers or their target groups. And that is how I got affected. It was not easy as a person with disability. You have nothing now, you start now from afresh, and then you must also compensate those whom had already given you and they entrusted you to repair their gadgets. Then all of a sudden you are being referred maybe by the authority as the police that maybe you did something, now you are taking advantage of the violence. Now given maybe the honesty and the thorough investigation that was done or conducted really proved that I was innocent, and I was not even taken into cell as a victim or as a suspect. But it challenged me to know that if you are doing your good jobs and you have to prove that really this is what happened, and some of your neighbors could also show and give you support, then I gained confidence until again I went back to Nairobi when I set another one, and I began a business, and my business started booming again. And that is how I started compensating those who lost their properties for my shop. And that is how life became so hard until when I decided again to venture into non-governmental organizations meant to voice the voiceless and also to stand for those who are disadvantaged like myself then, and to make sure that they are heard and they are seen on through us. So on their behalf they could be seen, they could be heard. within my area of location, that is Ongatarongai, Kajiado North constituency, Kajiado County. Then it was Kajiado District, now Ngong Division, then Ongatarongai location. Yes.
Since you are one of the PWDs, what challenges have you faced through the journey?
It has not been easy in terms of job, because as a person with disability, without why it not because of the constitution that came after 2010 promulgation of that constitution, life could have been very difficult, because before we were agitating for our rights to be entrenched in that constitution, it was not easy for any institution, be it a public institution, that is the national government, or private institution, to recruit you or hire you as an employee. For some of them believed you could not submit, you could not discharge your duties well, meaning that you are not productive in terms of maybe mobility or anything that needs energy. So the situation or the environment would really determine what you can do, but it is not a guarantee. But with the coming into force the constitution that we now have at the moment, make sure that those who are now the duty bearers would try to make sure that the duty bearers, I mean the government agencies, that now could try to implement. And now that is when the private institutions have started realizing that we are also human beings just the same way they are, and they could start now recognizing us. And they could also now allow some of us who had gone up to that higher education be employed just as normal people, and they could also see that again our values are there, and we could make sure they could also believe that we can also deliver just like any other person. And that is how we really started now embracing the 2010 constitution, because we contributed a lot so that our interest could be included. And that inclusivity that is there has really done a lot. It has really tremendously made some changes, and transformations have been seen from maybe in all sectors, whereby some of our interests and plights have been mainstreamed in each and every sector, whereby inclusivity that you have heard about it and diversity has been entrenched. And that is how we really embrace now the devolution which has come, and now it has made a number of milestones, of which these milestones have changed the lives and the livelihoods of people with disability countrywide, because they married what we call some of the principles that came from Convention on Persons with Disabilities Rights, that was ratified many years ago by the UN agencies, which made sure that all governments or all member states of United Nations could also make sure that every constitution that a member state is coming up with, each and every one person who is a person with disability, be it in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, must be entrenched, so that it goes with the international standards, how to employ people with disability, how they can enjoy their education basic rights, and also other basic rights that follows. And that is how I started now becoming their champion within Kajiado County, especially Kajiado North, when the devolution began. And the first government that was headed by the first governor of Kajiado County, Dr. David Olenkedyenye, recognized the people's voices. So through me, I was appointed. I was able to be appointed as the leader of people with disability, being their coordinator, or call it their chairperson, and I made sure that I led them since 2014 up to August 25th. That was in 2022 when my term as a board member ended, and other new board members were to be appointed again. During that particular time that we were appointed as the Kajiado County Disability Board member, I made sure that a number of deliberations touching on the rights and also the interests of people with disabilities would also be well represented. And that is how we made sure that activities that would really comply with the Disability Act was made as a regulation in that Kajiado County Disability Mainstreaming Board that was in place, was doing its best, going around all over the county, that is in each and every sub-county, from Kajiado North, Kajiado West, Kajiado East, Kajiado Central, and even up to Kajiado South. We could go around, hear their views, then we compile together. Then we make sure that all these recommendations or memorandum could now reach to the executive of Kajiado County, and then the respective ministry could at least also make sure that they hear us and then make all these views to become as policies, and policies that could make sure that the lives of people with disability within Kajiado County could be heard. And then those are the benefits that people with disability within Kajiado County are now benefiting from, because of us as the first members of Kajiado County Disability Mainstreaming Board. Yes.
What keeps you going with following all these challenges? What keeps you going, or what inspires you?
What normally inspires me or keeps me going is the spirit and also the compassion I have with regards to my disabled counterparts or colleagues who are still facing a myriad of challenges in life, whereby they cannot get jobs, as people who have gone to school. Some of them still cannot get what we call services. They cannot even still access the buildings that are built, not complying with the accessibility provisions of the law. Some who are still not getting medical services as enshrined in the Constitution as their basic rights. Some still who cannot also get cannot afford a meal in a day, just because no one can really hear them. Some still who cannot even go for correctional services like surgery, where I also benefited when I was young then. Some of them who cannot even form groups to also champion for their rights and also make sure that others are also empowered, like how I have empowered myself, and I was also empowered by others to join groups, so that these groups can really also change the mindset of people with disability, that you have to be given handouts. So I feel maybe what keeps me driving is the ongoing challenges that some of my disabled counterparts are still going through, as opposed to what we went through then. But at little bit there are some milestones that we can say some of these changes have been made as a result of pressure we have been making, and as a result of what we may call the law that is there that has really reminded the duty bearers to make sure that they implement. But even where they have not implemented, whatever has made me going is the way I normally handle issues by issues when they come to me, to make sure that my disabled counterparts or disabled elites, whatever they are doing, I copy cut, or it inspires me to make sure that let me also continue championing for their rights. And this has really made me get so much inspired to make sure that those who are still lagging behind should also be empowered in one way or another. That is what has made me to stand firm and make sure that I stand for them.
Mbona unaona hao watu hawapati hizo services ama hawajakuwa included in these activities? Nini nafanya wasifikiwe na hizo services?
Some who have not been included just because of one reason or another is because of lack of information. Not that they don't want, but some of them do not have an opportunity to also go for these informations, because they believe if they go for this, no one will ever serve them as per their expectations. Again, another thing is maybe because of negligence by these duty bearers, because some of them who have registered organizations or the organization for persons with disabilities and the organization of persons with disabilities. These two organizations, we call them apolitical. They are not meant for political reasons. They are meant for social transformation agenda, whereby they should come up with social business model or canvas which can actually transform the livelihood of these people by making sure that some of the income generating activities can really include these people positively, so that they can think of not minding about the handouts which has been there in their mind 24/7, that who will come for my aid when I don't have money. They should look for a way through which they can generate their own money, not handouts made by others. This has really made these people lose hope in other able-bodied way of doing things, and now they feel like they are not being treated fairly, or even their dignity is not being recognized. By now, I think some of them who are doing well are people who have been well connected as a result of maybe people who really want them to at least be heard. But some who cannot or are not able to get connections, or are just reluctant to know what is going on. That is lack of information has really made them to underdevelop, because they feel no one is for them. They feel no one really will cater for them. These people will really only agitate for their self-interest at the expense of their plight, because a person who is vulnerable, it is his or her plight first, not at the self-interest of these people who have developed an interest of making money on behalf of these vulnerable people, taking advantage that they lack the information, while these elites continue to seek for maybe some financial support on behalf of these people. And the vulnerable or the disadvantaged ones are now being neglected. But then for the coming in into maybe all the role being played by the international communities who have really made sure that whatever their programs that they come up with, make sure that they reach to the very needy people as opposed to others who are really trying to fish for their own interests on behalf of the people who are supposed to stand for them or to advocate for them. And that is how other organizations are really trying their level best to at least include them in various aspects, whereby education, bursary funds, or maybe education or scholarship can really benefit these people directly, not through other organizations that divert this money meant for education for the vulnerable children, especially the visually impaired and the physically impaired and the deaf as well, because the disability fraternity is diverse. It is not only for the few, that is the physical, who are now walking. You think they are the ones who are disabled. We have a number of them who have been left out too. Those are the visually impaired and also those who have multiple disabilities. He is a deaf dumb or she is a deaf dumb. There is also a person who is mentally or intellectually affected. These people have also been left out, and that's why the Constitution talked of inclusivity, and this inclusivity is now being sung everywhere, and others have come into action to make sure that inclusivity is now realized. For example, UN agencies that are dealing with empowerment of these vulnerable or disadvantaged groups make sure that the intellectuals plus their caregivers can also be given a support. Not only those who have been there as the elites who normally benefit, but the caregivers nowadays are being recognized all over, and they can also benefit directly or indirectly on behalf of their children, and even those guardians who have been taking care of these vulnerable children, they can also benefit because they are the ones who are taking care of these vulnerable or special needs children 24/7, because they need their support, they need their presence day in, day out. And that's why we also want to make sure that those who have been there, who really want to make sure that people are included, let these caregivers also be given a chance to benefit so that they can take care of these children when they are now accommodated, and they will feel very happy when discharging this heart-given responsibility, because it is by God's choice that they are there for them.
What should be done imalize hii kutoincludiwa kwao PWDs, tumalize watu wengi ndio wako begging pale streets. Hii inafaa ifanyike ndio at least hiyo ipungue, ama tumalize kabisa. Pata si ukiona mtu anaomba pesa pale streets na kakap ni mtu ako na disability. Hii inafaa ifanyike.
That mindset of a person with disability that should be it should be mainstreamed. It should be an inclusive journey. I mean, each and every person should take a responsibility of making sure that a person with disability does not mean he or she cannot do anything to earn a living. But these handouts should not be there the whole world. Other developed countries developed some kind of mechanism to make sure that handouts are not there. It can only come through empowerment. And this empowerment thing people have been talking about is in terms of giving them the basic knowledge on whatever the skill they should acquire, which now will equip them with the kind of technical skills that they can apply to make sure that they employ themselves instead of going to the street. And this is where we need each and everyone on board to take up an action of helping them where you can, to set up, to help them or support them set up their own businesses. However small it is, they will now stand self-reliant, where they will rely on whatever the income or the proceeds that comes out from these enterprises or entrepreneurship. And that is what now reminds me about entrepreneurship programs. Kenyan government has come up with a number of entrepreneurship programs through National Council for Persons with Disabilities. In the current Kenya we have, the few who have been in the street now begging for money, begging maybe for other things, I think it is now times up where they should stop it. Maybe they do not know where to seek support, but even the community itself should also discourage this, because we have found out that if a person has registered as a person with disability with the National Council for Persons with Disability, then there are other services that he or she should seek to enable this person get into his or her feet, whereby even if she is not, or she doesn't have even the limbs, that is the hands and plus the legs, but there is another way he or she can earn a living. Maybe he is talented as a singer, maybe he is talented as an artist. These are the kind of skills that we should try to support, so that these people can be people who are entrepreneurship oriented. We should support them, and that is why we hail the government. Through their programs, they have done a lot. As for me, I know where I came from, and that's why I'm supporting this, because they have, the government itself, through the national councils and even the respective ministry, those past governments have tried. It is only that the number is growing day in, day out, and the departments are now overwhelmed with the kind of needs that are that they get from these individual people in terms of employment. Then again, it is the responsibility of the government to make sure that these people with disability who have gone to school up to university level get employed, so that they do not go back to beg for any kind of consideration, maybe some kind of handouts. But even those who have not gone to school, they should be taken for these technical courses, and they get skilled, after which they can employ themselves, or they can be employed by private sectors. I think the KEPSA, which has really tried its level best to make sure that people with disability are also employed and included in matters to do with private sector. They are trying to connect them with various organizations like Microsoft, to make sure that Microsoft empowers those people with disability who have gone up to high school and they have some ICT skills, and they can now even come up with an innovation which can even employ them online. And those are the kind of private sectors that we want on board, to make sure that these people with disability cannot be referred as what we call disability is inability. No, it is not. Disability is not inability. It is just a condition that you are not working, but you still have your upright mind that can enable you to do something which is constructive. And these constructive activities can be turned into micro income generating activity or macro income generating activities, whereby you can even employ others who are also physically challenged or visually challenged. It's not a must that when you are a person with disability, then you cannot work. All over the world, those who have gone to school, some of them are lawyers, some of them are lecturers, some of them are even successful business people. How is it that in this world or modern world today, a person with disability is still remains as a beggar in the street. That syndrome should stop forthwith, and then people with disability, let us go out there, seek support which we really require in terms of bursaries, in terms of maybe a job opportunity when you have gone to school. The doors should be open for them when they seek that these job opportunities. Those who are there as the human resource managers, open doors for them. The law is there, and I can see adverts when they normally advertise this job position. They normally even also encourage people with disabilities, but sometimes these people, they don't employ them because sometimes the employers consider a number of things they require for this person to also deliver his or her mandate. But at the end of it, you find out that these people with disability are not employed. But that is notwithstanding. If they have qualifications, why don't you get them positions also, so that you judge them by whatever they have delivered, instead of judging them before you hire them? And I think in Kenya, nowadays we have a few of them as beggars in the street. It has been ended by the mandates and the services that the National Council for Persons with Disabilities have been doing since it was fully given an autonomy to make sure that they serve people with disability. For example, those who are in groups, they can apply for Economic Empowerment Fund. Those who are also doing their business, individual business, they are mandated to go and make sure that they seek what we call those tools of trade, whereby if you are a person who is doing his own business as a cobbler, if you are a person who is doing, maybe you are in an hotel industry, you can seek for maybe some funds to enable you buy some hotel equipment. Not only that, if you are a person who is a teacher, the National Council can support you and get what we call tax exemption certificate, and then the employer will not tax you all these taxes that employees are being taxed. Not only that, when you are you are a student, you can go for bursaries. That is from high school up to university. The National Council, it is only that the funds for bursaries are limited because of that fund allocation that the government has been giving the National Council in each and every financial year. It is upon the responsibility of the Ministry of Education to make sure that they work hand in hand with the National Council to make sure that they allocate enough fund for bursaries meant for people with disability who are really in need of these monies, because these monies will really empower them to get the basic education that they want, because these monies are not there for some of them countrywide, because a number of them the population or the demand is so high, as opposed to the allocation that has been given through the Ministry of Education as well as the Ministry for Labor, that is normally the National Council is operating under.
Kwa watu wamegeuza PWDs kama biashara, napata mtu analetwa asubuhi, anakuja anaokota pesa pale kwa street, alafu usiku anakujiwa tena, anapelekwa, kesho tu analetwa, ni kama biashara. Unaweza mwambia aje?
Now, there are people who are doing this illegal kind of business with people with disabilities. Some of them are Kenyans who have come up with these malpractices. It is illegal to use a person with disability to go out in the street to beg for money, taking advantage of him, and then you try to look even for other people with disability from other neighboring countries, whereby now they drop them very early in the morning, they start begging. That's why I said in Kenya today we are in some of us, I think we have tried to make sure that we empower our people. And some of them who have registered with the National Council, they have really changed that kind of mentality around many years ago, over 10 years ago, and the number has since reduced. But for those who have been begging for money on wheelchair, going from places to places, from hotels to hotels, from business enterprises to business enterprises, from stopping people in the streets to give them money. These are people who have been sought from other neighboring countries like Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda to come here and make money. Then at the end of the year, they go back to their respective country. They feel maybe this is the kind of job they can do in Kenya, which is illegal. I think it is upon the authority to come up with a proactive action as far as the law is concerned, so that this can be eradicated, so that we cannot be christened as people who are begging. We cannot be victimized as beggars in the street. Why? Because Kenyans have really gone to school. A number of them have been mentored. A number of them have gone to workshops on how they can be capacity built on various categories of social life, whereby when you have attended a workshop somewhere on how you can employ yourself, a number of them have really adopted that. And I don't think it is right for these people who are Kenyans, who are doing illegal business with people with disability. For God's sake, they will be punished. For God's sake, and I repeat, they will be punished, and even their generation will be punished. Maybe they do not know for now, but maybe in future, their generations and generations will have to bear with that, because they are doing something which God even condemned. You cannot use a person who is on the wheelchair or a person who is not visually seeing something, and then you use his disability to enrich yourself, which is illegal. I really and strongly condemn that, because now we have the county government. It is their responsibility to make sure that the enforcers can really make sure that they discourage this at the very early